Alright, Shalom. This is your brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rukakudash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Alright, now I want to go into a lesson on the recent video that was released by Apostle Tahar. And the video is in front of you now. All right, and it says, did Russia just declare war? And it's a question mark. All right, now for those who need some background information on this, let me pull it up. All right, so this is actually a video that was done by one of these channels. Let me see if I can get the name of the channel. But it basically goes into a meeting that Putin had with his generals. All right, and this is the video. All right, and he's basically stating and laying out the warning concerning the Ukraine border situation. All right, now for those who haven't been aware of what's going on as far as Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine is leaning more towards becoming a member of NATO, possibly. All right, but they do have close ties with the U.S. All right, now the dangerous part about that is that Ukraine joining in NATO or even being an ally to America will give them license to have military equipment literally on the border of Russia. Now this puts Putin in a difficult position. All right, and you get to hear the straits, all right, that he's in, the difficult position that he's in with this video. All right, so I'm going to use the video that Apostle Tahar used, just because the audio is a little bit better, and we'll just get like the first few minutes of it, and then I want to touch some articles. All right, so before we do that, this is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14, and it reads, "The second war is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly." All right, so let's go into it.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul from Off Grid Desert Farming with Paul and Adrian. Thing that I discussed today, so you will know maybe the last warning.
Very briefly, I'd like to add a few points based on what the Minister said and I said earlier in my introductory remarks. Everyone's been discussing that, and the armed forces are also looking at that. We're also discussing the draft agreements that were sent to NATO and to the US on strategic stability. What we see right now is that some of those who are against us, they say it's like an ultimatum by Russia. Is it an ultimatum or not? Definitely not. Once again, I'd like to remind everyone, whatever our, quote-unquote partners did in the past years, and the US, by promoting their interests and their security, thousands of kilometers away from their national territory. They've been doing it. Here are some of the hawkish things. They've been doing this without any UN sanctions. They were bombing Yugoslavia. Did they have a UN Security Council sanction? Where is Yugoslavia? Where is the US? They destroyed the country. Yes, indeed. That country had internal conflict, its own issues. But who gave them the right to attack and bomb a European capital? And so we had some other countries, who just barked along, or oinked along. What about Iraq?
Now, what you're seeing is the rebellion, right? The present order of the world, with Babylon the Great, which is America, being at the top of the totem pole of the food chain is being questioned and challenged. All right. This rhetoric is continuing to increase, all right, concerning the adversaries of Babylon the Great, which is America. Now you have to keep in mind that, again, the so-called Russians are Edomites, the so-called Americans are Edomites, the French, the German, the Australian are all Edomites ultimately. And the scriptures talk about a house being divided against itself, all right, cannot stand. And what you have is Putin outlining all the different instances of Babylon the Great, which is America, exercising its own power while restraining others from doing the same. All right. Matthew 12 and 26 reads, I'll start at 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And right now, you're seeing a divide, and ultimately it's going to end up in the third woe, all right, which cometh quickly, as the scriptures reiterates in Revelation, the 11th chapter. All right. Now, I'm not going to allow the video to play in its entirety concerning Putin's statements dealing with the lead up, all right, into where we are now. All right. You know, I'll let it play a little longer just so you can kind of get the gist of the conversation. But what he's doing is he's laying out all of these moves that the U.S. Babylon the Great has made, where they didn't have to have a NATO check, or they didn't have to be checked by the NATO system. They could do these things at their own will. And now you have these other nations, all right, particularly Russia, rising up, all right, rising up and lifting up the head, all right. And I'll hold that in Isaiah 14. But I want to get a little bit more of this video before we continue, all right.
What they said was the trigger. They said it was the weapons of mass destruction. They invaded the.
So now he's talking about Iraq, and he's talking about the weapons of mass destructions and the lie basically that was told for them to be justified in entering and destroying Iraq. So he's lining up all of these different atrocities that have been done by Babylon the Great, which is America, all right, before he goes into his point.
Country, they destroyed it, they created. What they said was the trigger. They said it was the weapons of mass destruction. They invaded the country, they destroyed it, they created a hotbed of international terrorism, and then they said, oh, sorry, you know, reconnaissance, intelligence gave us some bad results, you know. That was because of poor reconnaissance. Well, it turned out
Now keep in mind, this meeting is in front of his military generals and staff. So this is the conversation that's happening between the generals of the military of Russia. All right. Now the scriptures talk about in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, these other nations being a guard, or Russia being a guard to these other nations that are going to align themselves with Russia rather than America. All right. One of those nations is China, most notably. All right. And what you see is open rebellion. All right. The scriptures talk about them lifting up the head and asking, all right, if you have become weak as them. All right. Now, this is Isaiah chapter 14. And I'll start at 9. And it reads, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Now you have to keep in mind that Russia at one point was not in a position to talk in this fashion. All right, they had suffered the dismantling of the Soviet Union. And it took them years to rebuild themselves to a point that they're at now. But now the scriptures talk about those kings of the earth lifting up their head. All right, and this is what we see. Now, they're not going to back down. For those who don't understand what's going on and what he's speaking of concerning this current situation, the Ukraine is aligning itself with the U.S. All right, it's possibly it may become a NATO member in the future, but as of right now, it has openly aligned itself with the U.S. Now, this is extremely concerning for Russia in particular, all right, because the U.S. and NATO have openly called Russia an adversary or an enemy. Now, for the Ukraine to side with the U.S. and NATO, it means that they would have license to have military equipment placed in their territory, which is actually on the border of Russia. All right, it would be likened unto Russia having a deal with Mexico. And you have to ask yourself, would that even be possible? Would that even be allowed? Because this is basically what the U.S. is doing with Ukraine. They're positioning themselves to place equipment extremely close to the border of Russia. All right. So this meeting is extremely important because NATO has made certain statements and Russia has made certain statements concerning the Ukraine situation. About 175,000 troops are currently close to the Russian border or the Ukrainian border. All right, I believe it's like 150 miles away from the Ukraine border. 175,000 troops, 175,000 Russian troops. Now, NATO is making certain statements to try and put Russia in a position to back down. But you can already tell from this conversation that Putin has no intent to do such. All right, and ultimately this is going to lead into what prophecy has told us is the third woe. All right.
There were no weapons of mass destruction. Bad results, that was because of poor reconnaissance. Well, it turned out there were no weapons of mass destruction. It had been destroyed. What about Syria? Did they ever ask for any sanction from the UN Security Council? No, they do what they want to do. What they're currently doing in Ukraine, what they're planning to do in Ukraine, that's not thousands of kilometers away from our borders. No, that's right near our home. We cannot go any inch back. The US doesn't have hypersonic weapons, but they will get it. We can see that. We see everything. We can see those tests with it.
So that was a very important statement. What he said in that statement was that if the Ukraine system allows the West, all right, Babylon the Great, which is America, to place equipment in that region, they have no other place to back up. So basically, Russia's back would be against the wall. All right, it would basically have missiles stationed or military personnel concerning the U.S. stationed literally right at their border. All right, so this is an extremely concerning situation, but it's a situation that the Lord has fostered to prepare war. All right, so real quick, this is Joel chapter 3 and verse 9. And it reads, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord." So what we have is multiple situations that are going to end up fostering the third world woe, all right, or the third woe, as the scriptures calls it. All right, so Putin's making a statement about how important this situation is because if this is allowed to go without any challenge, it would basically back Russia into a corner.
Doesn't have hypersonic weapons, but they will get it. We can see that. We see everything. We can see those tests, whether they're successful or not. We more or less know when it's going to happen, when they're going to get those weapons. Okay, they put up sonic missiles in Ukraine, and then under that guise, they might use it. They don't have zircon. We do have zircon. It doesn't mean that they would use it tomorrow, but they might equip Ukraine and they would push Russia and those extremists from neighboring states together. They might, provoke them to fight against Crimea under very good circumstances for them. Do they think we're not aware of those threats, or we'll just sit idly by and watch it? No. That's the biggest issue, We cannot go back an inch further. Military conflicts or bloodshed, it's not our choice. We don't want such a scenario. We don't want to address issues through political diplomatic means. We need to have some clear-cut, legally binding guarantees. That's the point of what we sent to Washington and Brussels. And we hope we can get a clear response to it. There are some signals which say that our partners appear to be ready to work together, but there is a danger that there'll be an attempt to swamp it down, so to speak, to use that pause to do what they want.
So again, this is a very difficult situation for Vladimir Putin because now he's in a position where he has to defend his borders and he has to look strong in front of these other nations that he will have to be a guard unto, which is extreme pressure from the Heavenly Father ultimately, which is going to force the hand. Now, I wanted to stop the video because you have to keep in mind this is one isolated situation. All right, you still have China and Taiwan. All right, you still have Iran. You still have North Korea. You still have Amalek, all right, or the so-called Israelis. So you have these different areas, all right, that are contention, all right. Lots of tension, lots of contention in these different areas. And ultimately, the Lord is using these things to add extreme pressure to this situation. All it takes is for a pilot or a soldier to be a little more aggressive than needed in any of these situations, and things could quickly escalate. All right, Proverbs 21:1 reads, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will." And what you can see from this conversation, because you have to keep in mind as well that this conversation that we were listening to is a conversation between Vladimir Putin and his generals. These are the military generals. These are the heads of the military of Russia. And they're all in there discussing the concern over this border, which is a very legit concern. All right. Based on Babylon the Great, which is America's reputation for proxy wars and aggression, they have every right to be concerned about this situation. Now, through the Spirit and power of the Habashim Shai, we will see how this plays out. But I want to grab this article really quick because it says Putin sets out military threats facing Russia. All right, and if I forget to add the link, you can definitely just type in the title in Google and it should, or YouTube, and it should pop up. But if you need me to post it, I can. All right, now in this article, I want to grab this. All right, it says NATO expansion. In the address, Putin stressed that Russia needs long-term legally binding guarantees from Washington prohibiting NATO's potential encroachment on his country's borders. Last week, Moscow prepared two documents, one for the military bloc and one for U.S. officials, asking for a wide range of assurances it said were aimed at strengthening the security of all parties involved. The proposals focus on the movement of military personnel and hardware and include a requirement that Ukraine's long-held aspirations will not be realized. And what are those aspirations? Ukraine being a part of NATO. All right, the proposals came after talks between the Russian leader and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden earlier this month via video link. Putin said his country was seriously interested in getting reliable and firm legal guarantees that would rule out NATO pushing further into Eastern Europe, as well as the deployment of offensive strike weapons systems nearby. So basically, he's asking for a guarantee that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO and that they will not put offensive strike weapon systems, which are, they could include missiles. All right, most definitely. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov sounded the alarm earlier in December, expressing concern over a significant number of the bloc's weapons, including the American and British hardware, being moved closer to Russia. The top diplomat warned that this could lead to an all-out provocation, all right? And that's i.e. war, all right? An all-out provocation means all bets are off, all right? Now check this out. It says broken promises. It says, however, Putin went on to say that even if the U.S. were to offer such assurances, ruling out further NATO expansion, it would be hard to trust that American officials would stick by them, given what he described as a track record of pulling out of international treaties once they become uninterested in honoring them. All right, and even this article here says U.S. can't be trusted to honor its promises. Man, this is... All right, let's go to this. This is beautiful. This is 2 Peter 3:1. And it reads, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce despisers of those that are good. And I just want to use this as an example, all right, because again, history shows us that Esau, Edom in general, all right, have a track record of breaking truces and treaties. All right, but Putin is using that as ammunition to say that even if the U.S. on paper agreed to it, that there's a good chance that they would back out. All right, now let's continue a little bit further in this article. It says, as evidence, Putin pointed to the Open Skies Treaty, which Washington unilaterally withdrew from last year, accusing Russia of breaking its terms. The agreement was first mooted by the U.S. and the Soviet Union in the 1950s as a way of boosting transparency around troop movements and the deployment of nuclear weapons. He also referenced America's decision to leave the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty in 2002, a Brezhnev-Nixon Accord inked in 1972, designed to limit the scale of prospective missile defense systems. So he's basically outlining the track record of pulling out of agreed treaties and promises. All right, now let's get to the meat. All right, it says military threats. Putin also warned about the prospect of the U.S.-led military bloc's hardware appearing on Ukrainian territory, arguing that if Western missile systems are deployed there, their flight time to Moscow will be reduced to 7 to 10 minutes, and if hypersonic weapons are deployed, to just 5. So this is extremely important for them. This is beautiful, right? Because it's putting Putin in a position where he is going to have to make decisions that, according to prophecy, are going to lead to World War III. All right. Now, between him and the U.S., we understand through the Spirit that this is according to prophecy. All right. And I'll hold Ezekiel 38 and just finish this article really quick. It says the Russian president's remarks come amid heightened concern over American weapons systems being handed over to Kyiv. At the end of November, Lavrov said claims that Ukrainian troops had deployed American-made Javelin rocket launchers were a concerning development and could lead to provocations on the ground. So basically, Russia is making statements that, look, you have these Ukrainian military personnel that are using American-made weapons. And this is a track record of America using proxies, all right, for wars. Now, Russia has the ability to fight, all right, and along with its other allies, all right, this is going to ultimately escalate, all right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shai. Now, it says his remarks came just hours after the head of Ukraine's military intelligence service revealed that the Javelin had been tested and was being handed to soldiers in the war-torn Donbass region. All right. So that's all the meat on this. So let's go to Ezekiel 38. All right, Ezekiel 38 and 4. Or I'll start at 3. Start at 2. Start at 1. And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, all right, which would represent that land, that region where Russia is now, all right. Those lands were originally inhabited by Japheth, but now they're inhabited by Edomites, who now call themselves Russian. All right, verse 4 reads, And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company, with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. All right, now I want to stop there because, in particular for this lesson, the Lord said he would put hooks in their jaws and turn them back to what? The Cold War spirit. All right, this is the same type of attitude and rhetoric that was used during the Cold War. All right, and if you remember, the Cuban Missile Crisis involved Russia having missiles placed in Cuba, which was too close to the borders of America. My, how times have changed. All right, so I just wanted to touch on that through the spirit. You know what? I have one more article, and I'll just make a quick point on it because this offers another side of this equation as well. All right, and it says Ukraine pledges to stop Nord Stream 2. Now, for those who don't know, Nord Stream 2 is a pipeline. All right, it'll bring gas from Russia to Germany. So I'll just read a little bit of this because it gives you another perspective that, not only is there a military threat, but money is involved. All right, it says Kyiv has a plan to obstruct the launch of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which will bring gas from Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea, a top Ukrainian energy executive has claimed. Yuri Ventrenko, chairman of the board of state-owned energy firm Naftogaz, wrote on Facebook on Thursday that we have a plan for further legal steps to hinder the launch of this Russian pipeline. Now, you may ask yourself, why would they do this? All right, and I want to get to that point. All right, and it reads, the pipeline was completed in September, but has yet to begin operating, with German authorities saying that it will take 6 months or more for the necessary paperwork to be completed. Currently, European countries receive much of their supplies of Russian gas through a Soviet-built network of underground pipes running through Ukraine, and Kyiv warns that it stands to lose billions of dollars in transit fees when the project gets the green light. So basically, Russia is cutting out the middleman, which is Ukraine. All right, by using this Nord Stream pipeline, all right, they stand to make more money by cutting out the middleman. All right, so this gives you another perspective of why Ukraine needs allies like America. All right, to not only have better friends, I would say, because again, Russia's desire is to have Ukraine be a part of Russia. All right, whereas Ukraine wants to be independent, similar to Thailand or Taiwan, excuse me. Now, this is another perspective because again, billions of dollars are at stake. If this pipeline gets the green light, that's money out of the pocket of the Ukrainian economy. All right. So there's many angles here dealing with this situation, but again, it's added pressure to Putin's position and it's going to heighten the tension on the world stage. All right. So again, through the spirit, I'll end with this. All right. Again, we're going to go back to Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it reads, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. So with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rukakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.